70% held by homeowners and 30% held by commercial land. Prop 15 excises out with extreme precision the people who won't be disproportionately harmed by this change in property taxes and taxes them. 92% of the wealth generated from it comes from the top 10% richest commercial landowners in the state. These are people who've made a killing during the pandemic. And we're talking about $12 billion coming in every single year. 4 million of that, roughly 4 million, we can expect to come to MBUSD every single year. For context, that's about 60 to 70% of what we're already paying out of pocket to MBEF. We could use that to hire, to save teachers and save programming.
Okay,
sorry, thank you.
And Kathy?
Okay, I'm glad we're facing this as well. I think it's a big issue for every voter. I don't believe that Prop 15 is in the best interest of Manhattan Beach. It, in essence, is a state tax. So, you know, first in line is the state to fill in back revenues. After that, the county gets a portion of it. And then it moves down to the schools, and that includes community colleges. So they get a huge chunk of it. So we're kind of last in line. The schools are last in line. And not only that, when the money is dispersed, it's going to be dispersed pursuant to the local control funding formula. And as you know, from Manhattan Beach perspective, that never works out very well. That takes into account foster youth and you know, free and reduced lunch. And we just don't have very many children that qualify in those categories. Significantly, it will hurt Manhattan Beach businesses. Our businesses are already struggling, and we can't do that. Those are our partners. We get a lot of money from them. Finally, it's not going to be phased in until 2022 to 2025. We're not sure. And finally, to the extent that we want a local revenue stream, such as a parcel tax, if Prop 15 passes, I don't think we have any chance of passing a local tax.
Okay, and thank you. And Mike.
Yeah, I'll try and keep this brief. So I think the spirit of this is something that's important, which is we're trying to, as Jason mentioned before, separate out the burden from a tax funding standpoint. And I think a big part of this spirit is companies like Disneyland are still paying property taxes from the 70s, right? I think we would all agree that's unfair. I think the challenge is the way that this is written. While that's the spirit of who we're trying to go after, I think what it's ultimately going to hurt are other businesses that will unfairly share what that burden looks like. And the challenge, one of the biggest challenges I think is that if the full implementation of this won't hit until 2025, and at that point we'll have already had to figure out a local funding solution for ourselves. So I think that when you look at what the numbers are going to be, which is it's a range right now for coming to Manhattan Beach schools, it's anywhere between $2 and $3.6 million a year. I'm not sure that at this point in time in 2020, we're confident that wouldn't be offset by the negative impact of the small businesses that would be affected. It's going to take a long time and cost a lot of money to do the assessments themselves. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges.
You know, Jason, I'd like to move on because there are quite a few questions. Kathy, you raised the subject of parcel tax. I know the districts are searching for different ways to fill in their deficits. Can you tell me your position on a potential parcel tax?
I would certainly, we do need additional revenue. Our school district is facing pressures, significant pressures from increased pension costs, the difference in revenue between what we receive for special education and the expenses. And so we do need additional revenue. And I would look at local sources. I would talk to the city and rework our shared use agreement to try to get additional funding. I would additionally look to share in utility taxes or sales taxes if the city intends to go out for that. I would review our current parcel tax and see how that has benefited our district. And to the extent that that will be expiring in a couple years, we need to look whether we're going to renew that or renew it at a different level. We do need to look locally. I think it's important that we, as Manhattan Beach, make our schools Manhattan Beach, reflect Manhattan Beach. It's critical.
Heather?
Thanks, Kevin. I am a strong supporter of a parcel tax, an additional parcel tax. As Kathy mentioned, our current parcel tax is going to come to an end, and we need a sustained local source of funding that we can count on. I was out there going door to door. You might have met me over that time supporting the current one. And one of the reasons that I particularly like about the way ours is structured is it doesn't penalize seniors. All of our seniors in town actually took advantage of the exemption. So we can show that, you know, you don't have to be, if you're in a fixed income situation, penalized by the taxes. So I think it's something that can benefit us all, and we can share in that, and we can keep the teachers that keep our schools amazing. As we were able to let go of layoffs a few years back because of that parcel tax. And I really want to keep that going. It's a common tool that's used across several districts around us. So definitely pro. Thank you very much.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm glad we brought this up too. I also did a lot of work on the original one, and the reality is it was designed with a sunsetting period. So we will have to come to a reckoning of what that is going to look like, both in terms of, do we go for an extension? If we do, for how much? What would we be looking for an increase? And then how long would that period be? Are we going indefinite, or would that come with some? So a strategy will have to be decided. We have a little bit of time until we have to come to that conclusion, though. And I think we have some opportunities to be looking at locally generated funding sources from within the district as a starting point. I think what we've heard over and over is that the state funding model and the way that legislation is being looked at right now is not designed to fix or to help a district like Manhattan Beach. And so we have to be looking for local solutions ourselves. And so a couple examples or ideas: our preschool and our extended day EDP programs are always operating at capacity and with long wait lists. And so that means we have pent up demand. So there's opportunity for us to look at optimizing those programs with either increased capacity, increasing costs. There's a few things we can look at, but I think we need to be looking more at how we can make money as a district through other income sources between now and when we'd have to ultimately decide what the parcel tax strategy is going to be.
Thank you. Jason, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with the other three candidates here. I think we gotta fight hard and take a microscope to every little penny we can stretch out and find. And a parcel tax is an extremely efficient way of doing that. I want to make the point, and return to our last point though, that would be a raised tax on us locally. By passing Prop 15, we're not expecting our own, we can be certain that none of our local property taxes will go up. All residential land is completely exempted, and we can count on $4 million every single year coming into our district. Beacon Economics is an independent research firm that said that small businesses will not be substantially affected. So we can trust that small businesses are protected. Because of the long rollout period as well, any small businesses that can apply for further extensions and can apply for exemptions as well. Prop 15 is a massive, massive funding source, and we're looking for funding. And I think there's something to it being beneficial to the entire state too. Just because we have a low number of unduplicated students doesn't mean we shouldn't vote for it. We should vote to protect kids in Lomita and Hawthorne and Inglewood. We should vote in their benefit as well.
One more question on finances, and it's a bit ambiguous, but the Ed Foundation makes an enormous contribution. I think it's about 10% of the budget each year. Questions are always being raised about the influence the Ed Foundation has on curriculum and extracurricular activities. And it's natural. I'm not faulting them for it. It's, if you're putting up several $1 million a year, it's likely you're going to want a say in how that money is spent. Heather, since you seem to have had quite a bit of activity in parent programs, and I imagine you've been involved in the Ed Foundation as well, do you want to weigh in on the influence, the positive and the negative, of a whale donor in effect?
Okay. So I wouldn't say influence, I would say partnership, because our grants committee for the Ed Foundation partners and has several meetings to determine what is funded, meet with principals, the superintendent, even teachers at points, and have multiple meetings with the board as well to vet those. So it's not just a single donor coming in and saying, I want small class sizes. You know, it's really our surveying the parents every other year to see what they want. And then it's also partnering with our administration and our teachers to see also what is most needed. We also bring in best practices from other sources as well. So new thinking and innovation that the district might not have internally. So again, it's partnership, and it's not just a flip of the switch. It's really a long, thoughtful decision process that's fully vetted.
Mike?
Yeah, look, I would agree with the sentiment. Whale donor is probably not the right way to think about it. I mean, this has been a long-standing, multi-decade partnership that's been in place between the Education Foundation and the district, and the resulting increases both in fundraising and donations has largely helped keep the district afloat. As we talked before, there are realities of rising costs in public education funding that the Ed Foundation has really helped us with. Now, I also wanted to be like sort of very transparent about what it takes for the district to decide what money gets spent on. And the Ed Foundation, of which I also have been a board member for several years, goes through a very collaborative process to set and identify what those are going to be. There are surveys, as Heather mentioned, to try to understand from a priority standpoint, what do both parents and teachers think in terms of what are the kinds of things that we as a district should be funding, and we as an Ed Foundation specifically should be funding because of the goals of, and the vision and goals of what the board is designed to do. And with that, it is a very collaborative process. Now, this last year, I think we can look at it as a success in that we were facing a pretty deep budget crisis. And the Education Foundation and the community as a whole stepped up, came together through a virtual fundraising event, and was able to, through what we came together to do, save several jobs. And with that, actually reduced several class sizes from what they were going to be this year.
Okay, thank you, Mike. And Jason?
I want to briefly echo that. I think we owe such a debt of gratitude to the just Herculean work that the Ed Foundation does. It provided me with the education that I got, and I'm eternally grateful to it. I'm going to work hard to try to be in good and constant contact with our educators and make sure that their ideas have space on the board and among our decisions. And being an educator myself, I think I'll be well suited to do that. But I don't think there needs to be a framing of conflict between those two partners. I think that they are partners, like Heather said. I think that's really the right word for it.
Okay, and Kathy, do you want to weigh in?
I would love to weigh in. I worked on the MBEF board for a number of years as well, and was in charge of fundraising at the wine auction. So I understand that huge effort that goes into raising the funds. And, thank you to our community. It's just amazing. The parents step up year after year to support the Ed Foundation. But truly, the curriculum is set at the district level. The board develops board goals each year. It has a vision of what it wants. It looks at its enrollment to make those determinations of what classes we're going to offer. And then MBEF has been just a phenomenal partner in this. They come in, they fill the gaps. I know initially their focus was going to be on extra programs, things that the district couldn't afford. And that's where they put their funding initially. The grants committee, and still does, put money into music and into libraries, things that the district wouldn't be able to afford on their own. I know this year they've had to jump in and keep small class sizes and some other things. But truly that curriculum is set at the board level. MBEF is an amazing collaborator and works so closely and has been a phenomenal partner.
Okay, thank you. The next question may seem a little bit frivolous, but it's going to lead to the unfortunate topic of the pandemic. Some sports have been allowed to return to competition, or at least return to practice. Surfing was not. And okay, so Heather, I have a personal interest in this and a personal opinion, and I'll keep it to myself. But Heather, please let me know what you think.
This one, it just frustrates me. And really, I would push this on the board because surfing, we've been in the ocean for the whole summer. And the fact, and we've been allowed by the county for the whole summer to be in the ocean. The fact that our surfers are not back is a problem. They're coming back now. I know the surf team is getting ready to come back if they're not back already today, I think. But the hoops that they've had to go through, it's just, I think they should be back in the ocean. I think they should have been first because they didn't have the restrictions that the other folks did. I realized why there was delay because they weren't on campus and that, there was testing and things, but I think we should have listened to our public who had many public comments that surfing should be back, and we should have taken swifter action to get them back in the water.
Okay, Kathy, you organized a running club. Do you want to weigh in on the surf club?
I would love to weigh in on that. I do think that it's critical in this time when the kids are so isolated that we provide opportunities for them to exercise and be together safely. Yes, I created Beach Cities Running Club this summer to allow our cross-country kids to continue to run. We did it in compliance with all safety guidelines. Every single day, those kids do a screening. We do temperature checks. The kids come to practice in groups of 4 or 5. They have masks on, all precautions that we could possibly take. Not a single kid, knock on wood, has gotten sick, and we've been doing this for months. If we can do it to that degree, surf can do it. That's a very independent sport. They're out there on the water, very separated from each other. We should have been behind them from the get-go to get them out there. I do understand that it was an insurance issue because they are off campus, because we've had a similar issue as we try to bring cross-country back on a campus. We're actually starting Monday, and I know surf started, I think they started Wednesday.
Mike?
Yeah, I think we all agree they should be back. There's no question about it. I think the issue here is that this is indicative of a larger challenge that we've seen, and I imagine we're going to get into this a bit more if we continue talking about the coronavirus response. But we just haven't been moving fast enough. I think this is a sort of another domino further down the line that just didn't get a chance to fall as early as it could have or as it should have because we weren't prepared. And I think a big part of that, I think the population most affected by that were our families with children with special needs that got delayed in the implementation around looking at some of those assessments. Well, we had to figure out some of the other things that had to be done with athletics. And I think we underestimated how long that was going to take. And that's unfortunate. And I feel like if we had some of our plans in place sooner, we could have gotten to all of these different populations at a sooner time, and everyone would be feeling better about where we are today.
Jason, did you want to comment?
Sure, yeah. I wanted to recognize also the real organizing that went into that board meeting. Like Heather mentioned, it was clear that the surf parents, I don't know if it was through the booster club, but they really had a concentrated and deliberate effort. And I think that's really positive, that they saw something that they could contribute to, they could help solve a problem, help work with the district, and they laid out why it would be safe. This is an excellent example, right? We got to it being safe, and we needed to make it happen once it was safe.
On the subject of the pandemic, I'd like to start with where we are now, which is the online learning. And Mike, you mentioned your background in organization and entrepreneurship. Do you have opinions on how online learning is going and how it could be improved?
Yeah, and I would even spin this a little bit, sort of looking forward in how we can continue to do this. So I would say distance has been better this year than it was last year. And that's probably a statewide and maybe even a nationwide issue. We're certainly doing a better job, but I think we would all agree distance is not the answer for the majority of our kids. Now, with that said, I do think that there are opportunities that we can be using technology for, even as we get back to school. And so I think what this entire experience has put us in an opportunity defining state where we can now look at what is a healthy relationship we can have with technology, even when we have kids back in the classroom. And I think there are some models we can look at about expanding out against what were sort of the confining 4 walls of the classroom before, to be able to leverage many of the platforms and technologies that we have been using to enable distance, to be able to bring some of those experiences into the classroom. So we're no longer sort of confined by that. I think, again, we have to figure out what is the healthy relationship we want to have with technology, so that we can push and actually give our kids greater experiences and more opportunity. And I think that's one of the things that this entire experience has given to us.
Kathy?
Yeah, my primary concern is to reopen the schools as soon as possible, following all state and county guidelines.
Let's get to that. But right now we have distance learning.
Yes.
I'm interested in knowing if any of the candidates have suggestions for improving the current problem.
Yes, and I do. So during the interim, we need to make virtual learning a win-win situation for our students. In order to successfully deliver distance learning, it really needs to be a partnership between the district and MBUSD families. The key is communication, and it's got to include, we have virtual offices running in every school. They need to respond timely and with compassion. I believe that's working fairly well. We need to survey the families, make sure we find out what is working, where assistance needed, where we can make improvements. We need to have teachers and parents doing regular check-ins with their children to make sure that the kids are doing well academically, as well as look at their emotional well-being. And from the district, it's critical we have communication on at least a weekly basis and definitely as things develop. We need to build that trust between the parents and community and MBUSD to make sure distance learning is successful.
Okay, and Heather?
Right. I think a couple things that we could do to improve right now, which, by the way, I just want to say the teachers have done a harrowing effort to get us where we are right now, and the steering committee that set us up for success this summer. Thank you, thank you, thank you, because it's been amazing. Always opportunity to improve though, right? And here are a couple ideas. One that I've actually written to the board about in public comment. I think we now have parents that are educators at home as well that have no idea what they're doing, and they could really use some professional help. So having consistent parent education at the grade levels, especially in elementary, I think could really help ease some concerns and help parents be better assistant teachers at home to the children. I also think we need to have some data about how it's going, because everybody is wondering if kids are learning those essential skills. So we need some data and assessment. I also think we could, outside partners, like the Natural History Museum, we can get additional templates of what people can learn.
And Jason?
So I think things that have improved since we've been going through it is we've standardized learning mediums. Teachers were in last semester using a whole bunch of different learning platforms, and we've standardized that a little bit better. I think we've done a better job of preventing screen fatigue, although there's a little bit of that being unavoidable. We've managed to track student schedules in a better way. I think areas in which we can improve is providing some more tailored professional development opportunities for teachers. My understanding is they haven't had copious amounts of that for online learning platforms thus far. And general, every effort we can put into alleviating the pressure that our families are feeling, because I think this is really something serious. The social emotional burden of this on our students is probably really clear a lot to our teachers and to our staff, and the parents are just behind the camera and harder to see, and they're really struggling through this as well.
Okay, let's move on to this central question of the pandemic, which is getting the schools to reopen. Do you have a roadmap, Kathy, that you wanted to mention or describe to us?
Sure, I do. I have some thoughts to move it forward. First of all, I think we need to work on an agreement with our union. It's critical that we get the teachers on board. I know that the district, the board, and the union have been meeting regularly, but it's critical to get that framework so that we don't have an impediment going forward. We need to get the waiver filed. Right now, LA County is allowing us to do that. We're hopeful that that's going to get done tomorrow. We have heard from the school board that should happen, and that's important to get. We're not getting in line, we understand that, but we at least will be considered if we're out there, if we have that done. We need to have our classrooms ready to go.
Kathy, do you want to describe the scope of the waiver? Because I think people may think that means school's going to reopen.
Yeah, no, right now there's a waiver available for TK through second grade.
Okay.
And the process is you file your waiver and then you're in line. There's a very limited number. They're only going to allow 30 waivers per week. And it's divided by district. So, preference will be given to those districts that have, again, special needs or low and or reduced lunch and foster kids and things like that. So not likely we will get granted waiver, at least initially, but hopefully down the road. And in addition to that, though, as I was saying, we need to get our classrooms ready to go. We need our PPE in place, our desks 6 feet apart, plexiglass up where we need to.
Are you talking about for the entire student body returning and across the district, or are you?
Pardon?
What are you focusing on?
I'm focusing on across the district,
okay.
But as the county opens it. So right now they're allowing us to
I understand. Let me move on to I'm going to go clockwise. Mike, clockwise. Mike.
Okay. So there is a roadmap that has been put in place, right? The board has laid out that there are 5 tiers of getting us back. And I strongly believe that there's been a ton of work done on that. And I think that it is the right 5 tiers. It's the right 5 steps. And it does flow along with kind of what we will be allowed to do. What I would say is we need to be more proactive in being ready to move from stage to stage, number 1. And number 2, we need to be more transparent with our communication at every step of the way. And I think, and my candidate's probably sick of hearing me say this, but in the absence of clarity, people will create their own reality. And that is exactly what has happened as we've gone through this experience. And the board and the teachers and everyone has done a ton of work, but no one has known what's been going on until very recently. And so I think now we have an opportunity to capitalize on that, take advantage of much more frequent, much more transparent communications around what is happening and when it's happening. But I also, again, think we have an opportunity to be more prepared at every step. The waiver is one process. If the LA County gets into the right color and tier, we won't need a waiver. We have to be ready to go. And if we're not prepared for that, there's going to be an outrage in the community. We have to be ready. We have to be real about that.
Thank you.
So I think it's being ready at each of those stages with scenarios so that we are ready to go.
I understand. Go ahead, Jason.
I'm glad you asked about the clarification about the waiver, because there is quite detailed and thorny. And Kathy was giving us some really valuable info there, that it's 30 schools in the county per week, and it's divided into 6 schools per county supervisor. So our county supervisor, Janice Hahn, her geographic jurisdiction is quite large. And as Kathy also said, it's based on unduplicated students, free or reduced lunch, foster youth, English language learners, which we don't have many of in our district, which would put us toward the end of the line. So it's important to know that there's a lot of structures in place that would make it slower for us. A wrinkle in that, however, is UTLA, the teachers union in LAUSD, recently released that they're probably not going to sign on to LAUSD's application for the waiver. And if that is the case, and our district does get one submitted, we will leapfrog considerably further up in the list. So it's all the more reason for us to be ready to go, preparing our campuses to be meticulously safe, so that our students and our educators can have a working and learning environment that isn't harmful to their health.
And Heather?
So I agree about the 5-stage plan. It's well laid out, but we need the sense of urgency on each of those steps, which isn't happening now. If I was on the board, I would ask our fellow board members to have, and they'll probably kill me for saying this, weekly board meetings that we could actually, I mean, we're in crisis mode. We need to have feet to the fire, burn down lists, like a project management staff, that we're making sure that we're staying on top of this. Things are happening daily. And that's why I think that the county, for example, we could advocate for additional change. I mean, our numbers and the number of viruses are so low. And the fact that we're continue to be lumped in with the rest of the county, I think is something that needs to be examined. And I think we could partner with fellow school districts in the South Bay to make a real case based on data that we can return sooner rather than later.
Okay. Heather, you can follow up with this.
Sure.
If a waiver were issued in the next week or so, what I'm basically trying to get is a sense of where you feel we are in the pandemic. Are we ready to open K through 2? Are we ready to open middle school? Or do we need to wait? Are you fearful of the pandemic surging again? I mean, Manhattan's approaching 400 cases of COVID. It's lower than the rest of the county, but it's not insignificant.
I agree. We need to be phased. You know, we really need to bring them back in really cohorts and build some resilience. If we brought everybody back at one time, it'd be mayhem. And the teachers, it would be unsafe. We really need to be thoughtful and make sure that our facilities are ready to go and that our teachers feel really safe. I mean, I think that we should actually have a day when teachers are able to go back to their classrooms and just find out, like get cozy with the environment before they're ready to teach. And that takes time. We did that at Natural History Museum and it really helped our employees.
I'm going to add in a question to this that you can tag on to your response to the situation. And it's from a Laura Kiley. And she asked, you support testing and tracing for students, keeping names private on a regular basis when schools reopen. So if you could address that when the schools, even if the K2 is all that's reopened, whether you think there should be testing and tracing of those students and their teachers at that time.
Is that for me or?
Go ahead and tag onto it, but briefly.
Okay, I'll be quick. I actually agree with what's been laid out by the district already. There's going to be testing, sample testing of teachers as we go forward, but not testing of students. I mean, it's really going to be reliant on our parents and our parents' judgment to make sure that they're keeping students home if they're showing symptoms. So we're going to have some real parent education on that.
Okay, I'd like the rest of you to expand on that. I'm surprised to hear someone say that students shouldn't be tested. So go ahead, Jason.
I think they ought to be tested. Yeah. I think we should provide resources to families who that's difficult for. We should do everything we can. I think if we're expecting our teachers and staff to get tested to keep them safe, to provide a work environment as their employers where they feel safe and secure, we should strive to make sure that students are tested as well. If there's barriers to that, we should be assisting to help that happen. To answer, is it okay if I answer the question previous?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Luckily, the county really drives this for us, and they've laid it out in a way that I think is quite righteous and rightful. The most vulnerable for learning loss are the ones that are slated to go back first, right? These are the unduplicated students I mentioned before, free and reduced lunch. And these are our high need students, our students who receive special education services. Sort of tandem with that is students who are least likely to be actively transmitting the virus, which is our youngest children. So I think following that is a really clear and sort of non-arbitrary metric for us.
Okay, Mike?
So I'm going to answer them in reverse order. So I think we need to be looking at this as the path. What's the path to 100%, right? And the hardest step is the first step. And we are finally now getting there, which is great. We've made a ton of progress, and we're finally now getting many of our children with special needs back for things like assessments. So that is one area where we actually are on a path, right? We've taken our first step on the path. The next is then getting the next population TK through 2. Now, in the midst of that, we also have one other data point, which is the preschool has been open. Since the middle of September, we have had cohorted kids in that age group back at school, broken into groups, and there have been no outbreaks yet. So we do have at least some data on what precautions and adhering to the guidelines is looking like. That then gives us the confidence that we can move to the next step. But we have to be checking and seeing results every step along the way and looking at, again, back to that path to 100%, what are the numbers of affected kids every time we move to the next stage? How many children are in each gate so that we understand how much impact are we getting to get our kids back? And then, I'll briefly answer your second question. The default position I don't think should be to test kids, but I do think we should be contact tracing. If there becomes an outbreak, we would have to test. I mean, I think that would be responsible management of what we're going to need to do to continue moving down the path to 100%.
Kathy.
Yeah, I'm really encouraged, not only locally with how low our percentages have been, and with the kids that have returned to the preschool as well, but nationally as well. There's been some studies done. I know Brown University has a study which looked at, I think, schools that had reopened in 46 different states, over 600 schools, and the infection rate is under 0.05%, I believe. That would be taking one of our elementary schools, which is roughly 500, and having perhaps one child get sick. You know, of course, that's not great to have anybody get sick, but I don't know that we can ever do this 100%. I think it's important to have a comprehensive strategy. We want to promote behaviors that reduce the spread. We want to maintain a healthy environment, make sure we have cleaning and ventilation. We need to maintain healthy operations with our schedules, with class size, with a virtual option for those kids that can't come back or don't want to come back. And we need to prepare for when somebody gets sick with contact tracing. I think a decision on testing, we need to be guided by feasible, practical, and acceptable. You know, some parents are not going to want their kids to be tested, and we have to acknowledge that and accept that. That's totally fine. But we do need to make the opening of schools a priority.
Okay. The district, the board recently took a position on bringing back the disadvantaged students. Are you content with the path that they've outlined? Start with Heather. We'll go back to the same old route.
Okay, so I'm disappointed that I understand, but I'm disappointed in the fact that the middle school and high school special needs will be brought back, and I think January is the slated time, and that just seems far too long. I think but it's also a plan that could change over time. So I'm hoping it will. I'm hoping we'll see early successes, and we'll have those folks back earlier rather than later. I also just wanted to go back on that testing question. Just so everyone's clear that the preschool, the after school program, and now special needs, none of those kids are being tested to come back. That's what's happening right now. And that the plan is that if someone does get, if they're positive, if they have to leave school, that they have to have a test and be negative before they come back. And I do support that. So I just want people to be clear when they're asking that testing question that we're already have that in place. So just FYI.
And Jason?
I think it's worth mentioning that we've gotten these students back, I think in large part because parents have stood up and said, hey, I'm really struggling. They instilled an urgency in the district and in our school leadership that delivered students coming back to school this week, which I think they did start in limited numbers today. I think we're striving to set those kids up for success, and it's also required by law to do this, that we do conduct our assessments to determine their learning needs in person. So I think we're on the right track there, and we're trying to balance quite a lot at the same time. As long as we have educators who feel safe being in those situations, there is a need, a urgent need for those students to have their needs met and their constitutionally guaranteed needs met. So I'm encouraged by the progress that's happening.
And Mike, thank you.
Yeah, I think, again, I mentioned before that the hardest step is the first step, right? And we have now crossed that threshold where we are we're taking our first step on the path. I think we're all pleased with seeing progress, but I think we all want to see progress happen quicker. And I think that one of the biggest challenges that we're in right now, and part of my fear around us being able to execute on the rest of the plan, is the sort of balanced math equation that we need to go through, which is how many parents and kids are going to go back, and how many of their teachers are going to go back, and where are they going to go back. And we're seeing that right now with we've started getting some campuses open for assessments, and some families are coming back, but some aren't. And so we have to go through a very large matching process to make sure that we have all of the teachers in place that we need for all the families that want to come back. And for the families that don't want to come back, we need the teachers in place to continue distance. And there is a good chance that is not going to be a nicely balanced equation. And again, I mentioned it before, acceleration I think is a key. And this is one of the areas that I think we really need to be getting ahead of this and getting ahead of it now so that we're prepared at every step along the way.
And Kathy?
I'm thrilled that we have made an effort and that the assessments have started this week. And I understand that there's 30 to 40 kids in cohorts that are back at school this week. I am disappointed that didn't happen weeks ago. We were given authorization by the county to do that several weeks ago. And I would have liked Manhattan Beach to be at the forefront, to be the leader on this issue, and to have those kids back in school as soon as we were allowed. I know this is a complex issue, but it's critical. Our children, our special needs children, need those resources. Our families need that support. And we need to do whatever we can to make their life livable. We all attended the SEAC, their special meeting a couple weeks ago, and to see, it was heartbreaking to see what those families are living through. It's critical that we get the kids back and get them back fast.
Hey, Mike, and I think the rest of you also alluded to the importance of cooperation from the teachers. What, and we'll start with you, Mike, would be your position as a board member on how to treat teachers who refuse to come back to the classroom?
Yeah, so it goes back to that same equation, right? We're going to have families who also don't want to come back. So I think we have to understand what is the best way.
That can make their own decision, but the teachers are your employees.
That's right.
And so you have a say on whether they work or don't work.
Yeah, so this will be a part of the memorandum of understanding that gets put in place to be able to get different teacher populations back. So the one that's in place today only covers the high needs hybrid model right now. The district is currently in discussions to create what is the TK through 2 model. And I think at this point, we have to be able to service the kids that are ready to come back. So we have to create a safe environment. We have to give all the necessary accommodations. We have to have the environment in place based on the county guidelines. If those guidelines are in place, then the teachers have to be able to come back to be able to support the kids that are coming back. That's why I say it's not necessarily an either or.
If the guidelines are in place, and I'd ask the rest of you to respond to this, and a teacher says, it's not worth it to me, I'm not going to do it, would that teacher be subject to termination or suspension or furlough? And would you be ready to hire a replacement teacher?
If a teacher is not ready to come back, then there's a medical reason, obviously
no medical reason, just plain they're of the opinion that they're 45 years old, they have 3 children, and they don't want to take a chance.
I think the position would be then they would be looking at a leave of absence for the year.
And Jason?
Which is currently what is being made available to teachers who choose not to come back. I don't think Kevin will actually arrive at a headbutt moment like that, because I think we will be able to work collaboratively with our union to develop a memorandum of understanding where we will cover for contingencies like that. Okay. I really firmly believe that we have a wealth of educators who are ready to go back and do a job that they've been doing for decades.
Let me move on to Heather. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Jason.
I have a minute to respond. That's all.
Okay. All right. Leave of absence is definitely what's going to happen ultimately, but I think there's a between point where teachers, and I really appreciate our Dr. Suzanne Webb, our head of HR, having conversations with each teacher, which is happening right now, to determine what their thoughts are. It's really consultative. And I think if they're not going to want to be in the classroom, there are going to be distance learning opportunities that could be available. It might not be in the grade that they're currently in. It might be something else, but that's where, you have that discussion and try to find the best fit for where they are in life.
Kathy. Okay.
Okay. And I totally agree. I think we need to be flexible. If there are teachers that are in a situation that can't go back or don't want to go back, I am 100% sure that will be part of the memorandum, that they will be entitled to take a leave of absence. There will be opportunities for them to teach virtually, because there additionally will be students that can't or won't want to come back. We have a very collaborative district. I think we work really well with our teachers. I think most teachers do want to go back. So it can work to reopen for most students, and for those students in particular who want to be there.
Okay, thank you. I guess we've reached the point where we do need to begin with closing statements, and they're going to be 1 minute. And I think we started with Kathy. So Heather, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you. I appreciate it. So I really appreciate the discussion tonight. Thanks again, Kevin, for making this possible. And I also want to thank my colleagues here and congratulate you all on your last forum. So I really hope that you all vote for me. This is going to be my #1 priority, to be your representative if I'm voted in on the board. I'm going to bring my nearly 10 years of experience in leadership positions in the district, where I can hit the ground running for you in December and make a difference. Also bring my 20 years of work experience to this position as well. And I really want to do it. I really want to benefit your kids and mine, my son in 8th grade. I think we can do this together in collaboration. And we're going to face some tough challenges, but I'm up to the task and look forward to working with every one of you. Vote Heather. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Jason?
Thank you to Easy Reader, Hermosa One, New Voodoo, and Kevin. Thank you for jumping in to sub in for Mark. You did such a great job. Thank you so much. There's so much changing right now, day by day. I think it's more important than ever that we're transparent and we're working really with an attitude of togetherness on solving these problems, which is why I think my experience as an educator is an excellent complement to the other candidates you've heard speak tonight. I know what it's like to be in MBUSD classrooms day after day as a student, and I know what it's like to manage classrooms of my own. So I think our board stands to gain from having this differentiated skill set provided. I believe that we can really make a difference together. I know that education changes lives, and it would be an honor to serve on this board. If you're interested in learning more about my campaign, you can visit my website. It's jasonformbusd.com. Really grateful for the time. Thank you so much.
And Michael?
So yeah, thank you to the Easy Reader, Hermosa One, and New Voodoo for helping do this tonight. Thank you to my fellow candidates. These have been a lot of fun. I think the most important thing to be thinking about as prospective voters is how to balance what we are going to need on this board going forward. And I think we've reached an inflection point in our community and in our district, and we want to be preparing ourselves for what these next several steps are going to be taken together. And so again, I will go back to, I really think we need to be balanced in how we approach this. We need to be balanced in the perspectives we bring to it, and we need to be fostering a spirit of collaboration across the entire community. And with that, I think there is a shared accountability that comes from engaging with all of our different groups, from the kids to parents to teachers to the board to the district as a whole, to the community, to the Education Foundation, to some of our biggest partners. We need to be engaging and sharing in moving this community forward together, and again, grounding this in servicing and benefiting all of our kids together. Thank you.
Thank you. And Kathy, would you like to finish up?
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you so much for stepping in tonight. Thank you to Nuvuto and Hermosa One, Easy Reader, and to my fellow candidates. They're phenomenal. But I think my candidacy is unique. I have a background to fill the experience gap that we're going to be facing. I have 18 years of professional experience as an attorney and a CPA. I've got 17 years of leadership at all levels, an institutional history of Manhattan Beach and its in the Unified School District. And those give me the tools to hit the ground running, which is going to be important with these important issues that are facing us. I've been living issues that are at the forefront of our district right now with social emotional learning and developing our culture of care in this time of social isolation, communication. I'd like to strengthen that as much as we can, environmental issues, reopening issues, very complex issues, and I'm ready to hit the ground running on those. My experience energizes me to want to give back. I'm listening and I hear what you're saying. I want to work with you. I want to represent the parents and the kids as strongly as the unions represent their teachers. I want to reopen our schools safely. I want to fund our schools locally. I want to do this for all of our children and our families in Manhattan Beach. Together, we can create solutions. Thank you for listening.
Well, thank you. We've run out of time, but I will say you've made it very difficult for voters. You all present yourself very well. It's good to see 4 solid candidates for 2 seats. It's better than not having 4 solid candidates. I encourage everybody to vote, visit their websites. And again, thank you, candidates. Thank you, viewers. And thank you, Hermosa One and Jessica and Russ at Nuvuto. Good night.
Night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.